Did you know you have a superpower, a quiet one, that protects your peace without needing a single word? In a world that demands noise, attention, and endless explanations, it's easy to believe that staying silent means weakness. That if you don't chase them, they'll forget you. That if you don't explain yourself, they'll misunderstand you. But the truth is, your silence is power, a power rooted in clarity, discipline, and emotional self-control. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They believed that the more we chase validation, the more we give away our freedom. That real strength isn't loud, it's grounded. It doesn't beg, it doesn't prove. It simply walks away with dignity. If you've ever been ghosted, disrespected, manipulated, or pushed aside, and you stayed quiet, not out of fear, but out of self-respect, this message is for you. You're not broken, you're becoming stronger, and you're not alone. In the next 30 minutes, you'll learn how to use Stoic habits to reclaim your time, protect your energy, and build the kind of presence that commands respect, even in silence. So if this already speaks to you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to stop chasing and start standing tall. This isn't silence born from weakness. It's the beginning of strength. Let's begin. 1. Chasing validation is the fastest way to lose yourself. Have you ever tried doing something without checking who would notice? Without hoping they'd praise you, call you back, say, "I'm proud of you"? Try it once. Try saying nothing. Try walking away and not looking over your shoulder. It's uncomfortable at first, because for years you were trained to believe that your worth depended on someone else's response, someone else's attention, someone else's yes. But a man doesn't need permission to be whole. He only needs clarity. And that begins when you stop chasing what's already walking away. We grow up corrupt, chasing applause, first from parents, then teachers, then women, then bosses. You achieve not because it aligns with your soul, but because you hope someone finally sees you. But here's the trap. When your value comes from outside, you're forever a slave to it. And the harder you chase approval, the faster your dignity dissolves. Every text you rewrite, in every paragraph you send, explain yourself. Every apology you make is just to keep the peace. These are not signs of strength. These are signs of fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of not being enough. But Stoicism flips that script. Epictetus said, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. So why do you keep handing over your power, your time, your thoughts, your emotional balance to people who haven't earned it? You think you're being noble. You think by explaining they'll understand. But if someone wants to misunderstand you, no explanation will ever change that. You don't have to beg for a seat at a table you built. Think of a lion walking away from a barking dog. He doesn't explain. He doesn't turn back. He doesn't need the dog's approval to be king. That's the energy. When you're grounded in who you are, you don't need noise to validate your movement. You don't need a reaction to prove your worth. You walk in silence, and your silence speaks for itself. But here's what makes it hard. We confuse validation with connection. You're not looking for approval, you're looking to be seen. That's human. But chasing validation is not connection. It's self-abandonment dressed up as loyalty. You bend so they'll stay, you shrink so they'll feel big, you explain so they won't leave. But with every effort, you're saying, I don't believe I'm enough without your approval. That belief destroys men. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't perform. It's still. It's unshakable. It says, I know who I am even if you don't see it. And that kind of energy makes manipulators uncomfortable because they can't control what doesn't seek their praise. So do this today, just once. Don't chase. Don't explain. Don't ask if they understand. Say what you mean, then stop talking. Let your silence be the boundary. Let your lack of follow-up be your final word. Walk away without slamming the door. And when your mind starts to scream, what if they think I don't care? Remind yourself, your self-respect isn't negotiable. It's not a group project. You don't need to be seen to be solid. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. Let them wonder where you went. Let them feel the space you left behind. And remember this, every time you choose stillness over seeking, you gain something far greater than validation. You gain yourself back. 2. Those who truly respect you won't need an explanation. Have you ever felt the urge to explain yourself to someone who clearly doesn't care? You start talking, hoping they'll finally get it, finally see your side, your heart, your effort. But they don't. They nod, maybe, they give a shallow reply, then disappear again. You walk away feeling worse than before. And that feeling, that heavy ache in your chest, it's not rejection, it's regret. You knew better. You knew deep down that you were speaking to someone who had already made up their mind. And yet you tried again. That wasn't strength. That was fear, wearing the mask of connection. Let's strip this down. When you feel the need to explain yourself, pause. Ask who you're talking to. Are you trying to change the mind of someone who's already decided not to respect you? Are you pouring out paragraphs for someone who read your last message and still said nothing? When you do that, you're not communicating. You're bargaining. And no man wins respect by begging to be understood. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste what remains of your life speculating about your neighbors." In other words, stop explaining yourself to those who've chosen their ignorance. If they respected you, they wouldn't need your speech. They'd feel your boundaries. They'd respond to your silence. And if they don't, your words are wasted. Explaining yourself to the wrong person is like arguing with a locked door. No matter how honest you are, no matter how well you speak, it's not about the clarity of your message. It's about their unwillingness to open. You think explaining will bring peace, but what it brings is exhaustion, emotional fatigue. Because the truth is this: people hear what they want to hear. And most don't want the truth. They want comfort. They want control. They want to keep their version of you intact, even if it means misunderstanding who you really are. Imagine a boxer trying to explain to the opponent mid-fight why he deserves mercy. That's what it looks like. You're in a ring with someone who has already decided to strike, and you're still trying to reason. Stop. Drop the gloves. Walk out of the ring. Real power doesn't beg to be seen. It withdraws. It lets the silence settle, because silence carries weight. It confuses those who thrive on your emotional reactions. It makes them question themselves. It forces them to feel the absence they once took for granted. So the next time your fingers hover over the keyboard, about to type that long message justifying your worth, don't. Instead, take a breath, close your phone, and remind yourself, I don't need to prove what's already true. The people meant to be in your life will never ask you to shrink just to fit. They won't require an essay to recognize your integrity. Your peace doesn't live in their understanding. It lives in your self-trust. Say less, watch more, and walk with the kind of stillness that speaks louder than any explanation ever could. My silence is my last word. 3. Not explaining yourself is emotional maturity, not coldness. They'll call you cold when you stop defending yourself. They'll say you've changed when you stop explaining every move. That's how the world reacts when a man reclaims his energy. But what they don't see, what they don't understand, is that it takes far more strength to say nothing than to fight to be understood. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes he no longer owes the world an explanation. Not because he's hiding, not because he's angry, but because he finally knows who he is. We're taught early that silence equals distance, that if you don't speak up, you don't care. So you overcompensate. You explain your intentions. You break yourself open for the sake of clarity. You bend over backwards just to be misjudged anyway. That's not maturity. That's emotional exhaustion disguised as communication. And the ones who benefit from it, the ones who expect you to justify your peace, were never listening in the first place. The Stoics knew that stillness is not a lack of emotion, it's a mastery of it. Epictetus said silence is discipline. It's not silence to avoid, it's silence to protect. A boundary, a shield, a signal that says, I don't perform for perception. I don't chase comfort at the cost of my sanity. Because real maturity isn't in how much you say, it's in how deeply you trust that what you've said already is enough. Imagine walking into a room full of noise. Everyone is trying to talk louder, explain faster, prove smarter, and there's one man in the corner, calm, collected, silent. Who do they notice first? The one who's still. Because stillness carries presence. Not loud, not theatrical, just grounded. It's the same with emotional clarity. The man who doesn't explain isn't detached. He's decisive. He knows peace isn't found in arguments. It's protected by boundaries. Every time you feel the urge to over-explain, ask yourself, who are you trying to convince, and why? If your intentions are clean, your actions aligned, and your values intact, then explanation becomes noise. You can't control how they see you, but you can control whether or not their opinion deserves a response. And more often than not, it doesn't. You're not here to fix their version of you. You're here to live the truest version of yourself. So stop defending your peace. Stop performing for understanding. Stop mistaking reaction for resolution. The people who matter won't need subtitles to understand your silence. They'll feel it. And those who misread it, let them. You don't owe clarity to confusion. You owe alignment to yourself. Say what needs to be said once, then go still. Let your silence work harder than your explanations ever could. Let it become your calm resistance. Let it be the wall that keeps your dignity intact. You're not cold, you're calm. You're not distant, you're centered. And your silence, that's not emptiness, that's presence. My silence is my last word. 4. Your silence reveals what their words tried to hide. You don't need to call them out. You don't need to send one more message. You don't need to break the silence just to expose the truth, because your silence already did. When a man pulls back and stops talking, masks fall off. People reveal themselves not when you're watching, but when you're gone. They'll say all the right things when you're around. They'll play polite, act concerned, and wear the performance of loyalty. But the moment you go quiet, the moment you stop feeding their control, they unravel. We were raised to believe confrontation equals clarity. That if you want truth, you need to force it out with questions, accusations, and emotional exposure. So you chase closure through conversation. You explain, you repeat, you try again, and all the while they pretend not to hear, not to know, not to notice. But silence? Silence turns the lights on. Because the one who valued you will come forward. The one who used you will vanish. The one who manipulated you will panic. And the one who never cared will finally show it. Stoicism teaches us that words can lie, but actions rarely do. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." So stop listening to apologies that never change behavior. Stop giving weight to explanations that contradict action. You don't need their confession. Their silence is already a confession. Their lack of effort is the answer. And your absence, that's the test they never expected. Think of it like a candle in a dark room. You don't need to blow out anyone else's flame to see clearly. You just have to stop adding fuel to theirs. The people who only stood next to you because of your light will leave the moment you stop giving. And that's the point. Silence creates space, and space reveals truth. Not by force, by contrast. When you walk away without announcement, when you stop reacting, you break the pattern. The game ends. You refuse to participate in a performance that was never meant to serve your peace. And in that stillness, the fog clears, because true nature doesn't survive the vacuum of silence. It either leans in or disappears. That's how you know who's real. You don't need confrontation to get answers. You need distance and discipline. Stay silent and watch who checks in. Watch who gets uncomfortable. Watch who disappears. You'll learn more from their absence than you ever did from their words. And more importantly, you'll learn something about yourself. You never needed the noise to know where you stood. You only needed the courage to stop speaking. The man who walks in silence walks in power. He doesn't demand truth. He creates the space for it to reveal itself. So say nothing. Watch everything. And let your silence strip away the fiction. My silence is my last word. 5. Stop bleeding in front of people who can't see your wounds. Healing begins when you protect your energy from those who don't value it. There's a moment after heartbreak, betrayal, or rejection where the pain feels unbearable, and the first instinct is to reach out. You want someone to see it, to validate it, to say, "I'm sorry I caused this." So you explain. You reopen the wound. You bleed in front of people who never cared to understand in the first place. But here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access to your pain. Not everyone has earned the right to witness your healing. And the longer you keep spilling your truth into the hands of the careless, the longer you delay your recovery. We confuse vulnerability with exposure. We think being open means being available, that if we just express it clearly enough, if we show them how much they hurt us, they'll finally care. But what you're really doing is bargaining with your peace. You're using your pain as currency, hoping someone will exchange it for empathy. And when they don't, you feel even smaller. That's not healing. That's self-abandonment disguised as honesty. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Your pain isn't yours to prove, it's yours to protect." And that begins by being intentional about who gets access to your emotions. Just because you feel something deeply doesn't mean everyone around you is capable of holding it with care. Imagine walking barefoot into a room full of broken glass expecting softness. That's what it's like when you seek comfort from the very people who cut you. They're not built to hold space. They're built to deflect, to minimize, to justify. And every time you go back to them, trying to explain how you feel, you're hoping they'll turn into someone they're not. But they won't. And the more you explain, the more powerless you become. Healing doesn't come from being heard. It comes from honoring what you feel, even in silence. It comes from recognizing that your peace is not up for negotiation, that your emotions aren't a campaign. You don't need to pitch your pain to be valid. You don't need an audience to grieve. Some of the deepest healing happens in the quiet moments when you finally stop performing for the people who never showed up when it mattered. So the next time you feel the urge to tell them how bad they hurt you, how long you stayed, how loyal you were, don't. Sit with that pain. Let it breathe without validation. Wrap it in self-respect. Keep it sacred. Because when you protect your wound from unworthy eyes, you give it space to become strong. Not everyone deserves to witness your becoming. Some only want to feed off your breaking. So protect your energy. Guard your healing. And when silence becomes your sanctuary, you'll realize something powerful. Your peace never needed their permission. My silence is my last word. 6. Closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Epictetus. There's something quiet and brutal about realizing the closure you're waiting for will never come. You sit in the silence. You scroll back through conversations. You rehearse what you'll say if they ever call back. But they don't. And the longer you wait, the louder the truth becomes. They've already moved on. They made peace with what broke you. And yet, you're still standing in the ruins, hoping they'll come back to finish the story. But here's the truth. They won't. And you don't need them to. Closure is not a conversation. It's not a message. It's not their apology or their explanation. It's a decision you make in silence, to stop asking for what they've already refused to give. You think if they just understood how much they hurt you, maybe they'd care. Maybe they'd give you peace. But that kind of peace built on someone else's validation is a trap. It's not healing. It's dependency. And a man doesn't need permission to move forward. He only needs self-respect. We were taught that endings must feel complete, that closure requires agreement. But in the real world, you won't always get that. Some people will ghost you, some will betray you, some will disappear mid-sentence and never look back. If you keep chasing closure from them, you're not seeking truth, you're delaying healing. You're reopening wounds, hoping the one who cut you will stitch you back together. But the one who broke your peace is not responsible for restoring it. The Stoics didn't wait for apologies. They didn't hold their growth hostage to someone else's emotional capacity. They chose clarity over comfort. When someone left, they let them go. Not because it didn't hurt, but because dignity matters more than closure. Closure to a Stoic is the moment you stop needing their explanation and start listening to your own. Picture this. You're holding a door open, waiting for someone to return. Time passes. Your arm aches. The wind rushes in, and no one comes. At some point, you must close that door, not because you're bitter, but because it's cold, and you deserve warmth. That's what self-closure is. It's letting go without drama. It's walking away without an ending. It's learning that peace isn't something someone gives you. It's something you protect when silence is all they've left you. So stop typing that long message. Stop hoping for that one last talk. Stop thinking that if you explain your pain perfectly, they'll finally get it. They won't. And you'll only end up emptier than before. Instead, sit still, breathe, and say to yourself, "This ends here. I carry the weight no more." Then walk away, not to prove anything, but because you finally understand that some chapters close without punctuation. And that's okay. Your silence is not surrender. It's sovereignty. You don't need their words to move on. You just need your own. My silence is my last word. 7. Your silence teaches them what your words never could now. They can twist your words, but they can't twist your silence. They can ignore your truth, but they can't ignore your absence. That's the shift, when you stop trying to be understood and start becoming untouchable. When you no longer explain why you walked away, you let them sit with the weight of your disappearance. And that silence says everything. There's a reason people panic when you stop reacting. They're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing control over the version of you they could manipulate. As long as you're explaining, you're still playing the game. You're still dancing in their arena, trying to win a battle that's already beneath you. But when you go quiet, not in resentment, not in anger, but in absolute clarity, you teach them a lesson they never expected to learn. The Stoics didn't raise their voices. They raised their standards. Marcus Aurelius lived by the principle that power isn't loud. It's still. It's self-contained. It doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't perform. It simply exists, calmly, completely. And when you walk away without slamming the door, your silence echoes longer than any speech you could have delivered. Think of silence like a mirror. When you hold it up, people are forced to see themselves. No filters, no distractions, just the raw truth of their own actions reflected back at them. That's why your silence hits harder than your anger ever could. It doesn't defend, it exposes. It doesn't argue, it reveals. And once they're left alone in that mirror, they begin to realize what your presence covered up. There's power in restraint. You don't have to prove your pain. You don't have to correct their narrative. You don't have to fight to be seen. The man who knows who he is doesn't chase clarity. He becomes it. And when he disappears, he doesn't vanish in confusion. He vanishes in discipline, a quiet retreat that speaks volumes. Imagine a storm that's been threatening all day, dark skies, strong winds, thunder in the distance. Everyone braces for chaos. But then, nothing. It never comes. The stillness that follows is far more unnerving. That's what your silence does. It makes them expect a reaction, an explosion, a response, a return. But when nothing comes, they're left alone with the reality they tried to escape. You don't need to yell to make your point. You don't need to repeat yourself to be taken seriously. What you need is distance. What you need is detachment. And what you need most is the courage to walk away without the final word, because the final word is already written in your absence. So next time someone pushes you to react, don't. Let your silence do what your arguments never could. Let it teach. Let it speak. Let it stand. You are not invisible. You are unavailable. Not because you're weak, but because your strength is no longer up for debate. My silence is my last word. 8. They expected you to break, but you went quiet, and that broke them. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, Seneca. They expected begging. They expected a meltdown. They expected a reaction loud enough to give them something to hold over your head. But instead, you gave them nothing. Just silence. No goodbye. No long message. No final defense. You walked, not because you didn't care, but because you finally did. Not for them, for yourself. And in that silence, something happened. They lost control. They lost the upper hand. And they realized they miscalculated you completely. Most people rely on your reaction to validate their power. As long as you fight back, they know they still own space in your head. They provoke, they manipulate, they disappear, just to pull you into a storm they created. But the moment you choose stillness over response, you remove their oxygen. You collapse their entire strategy, because control doesn't survive where there's no conflict. They expected you to chase, they expected you to break, but you didn't. You stayed still. And that silence? It screamed louder than anything you could have said. Stoicism teaches that strength isn't in how loud you speak, it's in how firmly you stand. You don't have to shout, "I'm done," to be done. You don't have to prove your piece to keep it. Walking away without drama is the final act of self-respect. And in a world trained to perform, your stillness disrupts the pattern. It forces people to confront their own actions. No escape, no distraction, just the hollow sound of your absence echoing through everything they thought they controlled. Picture a man walking out of a burning building, quietly, without panic, without explaining the fire. That image stays with people. That's what your silence does. It leaves a mark not by force, but by certainty. It tells them, You don't have access to me anymore. And for those who relied on your reaction to feel important, that silence is unbearable. They may pretend not to care. They may laugh it off. But when the energy you used to pour into them is suddenly gone, they feel it. When you no longer respond, they feel it. When your name doesn't show up in their notifications, they feel it. And by then, it's too late. Because a man who has found peace in silence doesn't go backward. He doesn't return to prove anything. He doesn't circle back for closure. He lets the void speak. So don't explain your distance. Don't defend your silence. Don't respond to their confusion. Let them sit in the space where your voice used to be. Let them wonder. Let them replay everything they did wrong. And let your silence be the consequence they never saw coming. You didn't break. You leveled up. And in that upgrade, you outgrew the noise, the games, the patterns. You didn't stay silent to punish them. You stayed silent to protect yourself. That's not retreat. That's rise. My silence is my last word. Silence is not emptiness. It is a strength. It is discipline. It is your shield in a world that demands reaction. Throughout this journey, you've seen how stillness can reclaim your power, restore your dignity, and protect your emotional clarity. You've learned that you don't have to chase to be chosen. You don't have to explain to be understood. And you never have to beg to be respected. Every time you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you walk away without looking back, you show the world your standards. And every time you choose peace over performance, you build something far stronger than validation. You build unshakable emotional control. This is the heart of the Stoic mindset. To be grounded. To act with purpose. To remove yourself from chaos without apology. Detachment does not mean you no longer care. It means you care too much about your peace to let anyone steal it. So begin practicing this habit every day. When tempted to react, pause. When you feel misunderstood, stay still. When someone disrespects you, walk quietly. Let your silence become your superpower and let it speak on your behalf. Now, I invite you to take a moment to reflect. Share in the comments below. What's one moment in your life when your silence said more than words ever could? Your story matters. Your voice matters, even in its quietest form. Let this not be just a video you watched. Let this be the standard you carry. When you master silence, you don't become invisible. You become undeniable. My silence is not a weakness. It is self-respect. It is wisdom. And it is my final word.